regarding a government healthcare takeover. My column this week talks about the so-called cancel culture, and I wonder who is next. We talked about MLK and that column he used to have in Ebony magazine when a closeted gay teen wrote and asked him for advice, and King gave him advice that would be perceived today as homophobic. Told him to pray and see a shrink. I got a question. About Joe Biden. How has he gotten away with lying about his civil rights record? Lying about attempting to meet Nelson Mandela and saying he got arrested, lying and saying that after Mandela got out of prison, he came to visit Joe Biden when he was VP. No evidence of any of that. Isn't that using black people as props? The National Association of Police Organizations has endorsed Donald Trump. They endorsed Obama-Biden in 2008, Obama-Biden in 2012. They've now switched over to President Trump. All of that and more, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. There is some news on the coronavirus vaccine front. A lab in the UK is said now to be conducting human tests, which is pretty far down the road towards perhaps developing a vaccine that can actually be used. And there's another company also said to be developing a vaccine, and others are developing better and better treatment. So every single day, because of the power of the American economy, which is based on capitalism, something that many of the people who are trying to elect Joe Biden want to do away with. Because of that, we are working real hard on developing something. Now, remember when President Trump had his event at Mount Rushmore and there was concern that he didn't care and that there was no social distancing and people there weren't using masks, yada, blah, et cetera. How many more people are going to contract the coronavirus? Well, health officials have reported there are no COVID cases that can be traced back to the Mount Rushmore event. Nearly 3,000 people were there in line. Going to be a disaster, they were saying. And now health officials are reporting, USA Today reported that the concern about the celebration, which 75 people are expected to attend, along with a lack of mitigation efforts, could lead to a spike in infections. State epidemiologists, according to the Rapid City Journal, Rapid City, South Dakota, quote, a state epidemiologist said in a call Monday with reporters that no public notices or trends in the data reflect an outbreak resulting from the July 3 fireworks show attended by President Trump at Mount Rushmore. No specific trends related to new cases. Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. The Orlando Sentinel went further into detail. Some labs in Florida were not reporting negative coronavirus cases. So you had some labs that were reporting 100% so-called positivity rate, or the percent of tests that are positive. 100%. Health officials said it is unclear how that happened and that they are working on it. They said the problem was centered on small private labs, not on them. In a statement, the health department says they're working on those labs to ensure that all results are going to be reported, yada, blah, et cetera. But further adding to the confusion, isn't it? And the mayor of Philadelphia, of course a Democrat, is banning large events, but does not apply that ban to protests or demonstrations. This is what we're talking about here. We talked about this with Dr. Strom last week. There was a letter signed by over 1,000 healthcare experts, officials, people in the field, all saying it's important for our nation's health for people to be able to go out in the streets and demonstrate. That's part of health. So you're telling everybody else who is, quote, non-essential, stay home, And when you come out, make sure you have a mask on, even if you're outside. But if you're out protesting the death of George Floyd, because after all, everybody knows that the police are engaging in systemic racism against black people, we got to do something about that. So that's really a healthcare issue as well. The Philadelphia mayor says it doesn't really apply the ban to protests or demonstrations.
The city's Office of Special Events will not accept, review, process, or approve applications, issue permits, or enter into agreements for special events or public gatherings of 50 people or more on public property through the end of February. The moratorium will apply to special events and public gatherings, including but not limited to festivals, parades, concerts, carnivals, fairs, and flea markets.
Okay.
In addition, permit applications for residential block permits will not be accepted until further notice. The timeline when such activities may resume will be communicated as soon as possible. To be clear, this hold on large public events does not apply to demonstrations and First Amendment protected activities.
To demonstrations and First Amendment protected activities. So are you warning people they should not participate in these demonstrations? Or are you saying that the warnings don't matter if you're participating in a demonstration to advance the cause of anti-police brutality? A former New York Times reporter says that there's no evidence at all, either nationally or internationally, that the school lockdowns are effective.
It's very strange. There's no real evidence nationally or internationally that lockdowns had the desired effect. You can point to countries that didn't lock down, like Japan, where actually the virus is less, hit less hard than almost any other developed country. You can point to countries that locked down early and hard, like Italy, where there was a terrible, spike in virus deaths. Italy has more per capita deaths than the United States, and that's still true. On the state level, that's also true. And so, if we're going to do this, if we're going to try this again, shouldn't there be some evidence that it actually worked the first time?
He was not limiting that to school lockdowns. He was saying lockdowns in general. He says there's no evidence nationally or internationally that they really do work. And we've been talking about all the unintended consequences, the byproducts of the lockdown. My goodness. A San Francisco journalist decided to take a look at the hotel rooms that have been used to house the homeless because we're concerned about the homeless contracting the coronavirus. So this journalist decided to find out what the accommodations were like. And
how's it going, Erica?
Horrible. It's an absolute disaster. It's solving exactly nothing. And as a matter of fact, it's making all the problems worse. Insider sources are telling me what they are seeing inside the hotels, and it is about as bad as you could imagine, only exponentially worse. You're talking drug-fueled parties, overdoses, deaths. People are being assaulted. You have sexual assaults going on. It is pandemonium. It is extremely bad, and it needs to stop.
Erica, does anybody else see this as the disaster that you've been reporting on? And what can we expect to happen here?
Yes, the people who are assigned as disaster workers, and these people have been librarians, they're just paper pushers, administrators who are reassigned to these hotels, and what they are telling me is beyond the pale. They are not just horrified, they are traumatized by what they see. You have mattresses that have feces on them, blood, hospital bands all, on the floor. What people are seeing is just, it is so horrible that they walk out and they say, I don't want to go back in there.
I sure hope nobody was eating. 888-971-SAGE. We come back. Jake Tapper and Dr. Sanjay Gupta of CNN, which I watched, so you don't have to, blasting Governor Cuomo for his coronavirus victory tour. And what about low-income students, the one who most need education? Charles Barkley weighed in on that. And looks like Nick Cannon is going to keep his job after all because he apologized for his anti-Semitism. More on that. I'm Larry Elder.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
Bedwench,
bootlicker,
black white supremacist,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom,
coon.
I have a coon award over there. Coon of the Year award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist,
Racial, racist, racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black?
America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No. Our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
We're talking about Dr. Fauci. The president has been critical of Dr. Fauci in recent days, and of course, Dr. Fauci has been defended on CNN and MSNBC, which I watched, so you don't have to. I just want to remind you of something Dr. Fauci said as late as March 8 on 60 Minutes.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak...
There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. And now masks are mandatory.
Wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet. But it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is.
Now, later on, Dr. Fauci said, well, I said that because I just didn't want people to go out and buy masks because there would be a run on masks and the healthcare providers would not be able to have them. So I lied. He didn't say he lied. But that's what he did. So this guy is a respected, probably the guy that people look to. And here he is admitting that he lied because he did a cost-benefit analysis and felt it was better for you to presumably expose yourself or not have the defenses that you otherwise would have against the coronavirus because, after all, we don't want you to go out and buy masks when the healthcare providers need them. So I lied because it was in your benefit for me to do so. But generally speaking, I don't lie.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Larry posts new excerpts of the show on YouTube every day. Just go to youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio and click on the subscribe button.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Elder. Donald Trump is fighting this thing all by himself. I think Americans need to start a letter writing campaign and send a message to Washington, D.C. that you're either going to work behind Trump and help him move the country forward, or you're going to find out the hard way next election time that, we're fed up with it. So maybe a letter writing campaign to let Donald Trump know that we are behind him instead of him fighting this battle all by himself.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I hear you. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. I'll get back to Mr. Trump in just a second. Mike Lindell is stepping up. He's making face masks and is giving them free to hospitals all around the country. He's also offering you fantastic deals on all of his products. Just go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and check out these buy one, get one frees on a variety of amazing products, including, but not limited to, Supima My Pillows, Giza Dream Sheets, My Pillow Towels, duvet covers, Giza pillowcases, neck pillows. And if you buy Mike Lindell's book, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO, you're going to get free shipping and a $25 gift card. So just go to mypillow.com, enter promo code Larry, or call 800-890-1843. And again, be sure and use promo code Larry. I want to get back to the coronavirus and to the protest and to Nick Cannon initially saying he was not going to apologize for these ridiculous, idiotic, hostile, anti-white, anti-Semitic posts, things that he's been saying, that he said in that interview with the former member of Public Enemy, who ironically was kicked out of the group because he said Jews were evil. So he's having a discussion with someone who was kicked out of a rap group for his anti-Semitism, and they're discussing anti-Semitism, and they're engaging in anti-Semitism. It was just wild. We're going to get back to that in a second. But your comment about Trump struck me, because I feel the same way. I don't know how this man does it. What was the line some of his haters said when he ran? He ran because he wanted to make money. He wanted to enhance his brand. Man was already famous, already multimillionaire, billionaire. And at least the first couple of years, I don't know, I haven't looked at it recently, but he lost money. His net worth went down, not up. And not too surprisingly, given this cancel culture that we're in, half the country hates his guts or more than that. And some of those would otherwise have used his properties, have stayed at his places, have bought some of his condos. Can you imagine a left-wing person now buying a condo in Trump Tower? What that person's friends would say? So this is the life that he voluntarily took on. And people like Paul Krugman, the longtime economist, longtime column for the New York Times, which is not editorialized, which has not endorsed a Republican president, a Republican for president since 1956. He wrote a column and said Donald Trump was going to be a disaster and the stock market was going to tank. Predicted that we might even go into a depression. I think he even used the word depression. Obama, what magic wand does he have to bring back these jobs? What happened? Economy roaring. Stock market setting records. NASDAQ, Dow. People feeling more confident about their economic prospects than any time in 20 years, 30 years. Approval rating gone up. One time I think it almost hit 50%, didn't it? And this despite the news relentlessly negative. I interviewed my friend Tim Grosclose, the professor that wrote the book called Left Turn. Used to be at UCLA out here in California, now he's in Virginia at George Mason, where I believe he's a lot more in a lot more welcoming arms. It's tough being a non-lefty at UCLA or USC. He wrote a book to try to quantify the effect of the media on how people actually vote. His conclusion? If the media were truly fair and balanced, if people really got their news from a center-left, a center-right, and a center source, the average state would vote the way Texas, at least the way Texas used to vote, 8 points in favor of a Republican. Now, when you are pounded and pounded and pounded like this, and somehow you crawl to 50%, that's pretty damn impressive to me. Last night on CNN, which I watched so you don't have to, Chris Cuomo, don't call him Fredo, actually used the word BS and didn't say BS, referring to, in his opinion, Trump minimizing the coronavirus. Actually said that. That's one thing when you're quoting somebody else saying it, as CNN did when they quoted Trump reportedly referring to certain African countries and Haiti as blank hole countries. But he just said it. Just said it. And they feel free to say that. Can you imagine if anybody had said something like that about Obama? You're fired before the commercial break. The man never got a honeymoon. A honeymoon is a term that means, generally speaking, for at least a few weeks, if not a few months, the media backs off and they do kind of soft stories about you're coming in there and looking at the carpet and decisions that you're making on drapes and stuff like that and how you're finding your way around, and nothing like that. They were on him from the moment he got elected. What did that piece say? The resistance begins today. Can you give him a little love on not putting the Middle East in flames as you thought was going to happen when he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, even though Obama said he would do it and didn't do it, even though George W. Bush said he would do it and didn't do it? A little love for changing the asylum procedure so that now somebody coming up to our southern border has to apply for asylum in the first safe country, which is Mexico? We don't have the caravan headlines anymore. Can you give him a little love for that at least? A little love for the stock market hitting high after high after high, and NASDAQ high after high for a while? And by the way, they're both coming back up. No credit for that? Nothing? Not even credit for engaging in a conversation about choice in school when we got 13 high schools in Baltimore where 0% of kids can do math at grade level, another half a dozen where only 1% can. And Donald Trump's a bad guy for having a Secretary of Education who wants to give these kinds of parents an option out of said school? Can you give him credit for pardoning Alice Johnson, for pardoning Jack Johnson? For the First Step Act? For increasing funding for historically black colleges? For something? I'm Larry Elder.
Larry will be right back. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The president had the audacity in an election year, just a few months before the election, to be political in a speech to the American people. Here's what the president said about the Obama-Biden administration, something that he has to run against as we get nearer and nearer the general election.
But if we had listened to Joe Biden, hundreds of thousands of additional lives would have been lost. And if you look at the job he did on swine flu, I looked at a poll. They have polls on everything nowadays. And they got very bad marks on the job they did on the swine flu. H1N1. He calls it N1H1. H1N1. Got very poor marks from Gallup on the job they did on swine flu.
That's the reason CNN and MSNBC claims they pulled out of the speech. They pulled out of the speech because they don't want Americans to see anything the president is saying. They lied about the Mount Rushmore speech because they don't want you to know what the president's message is. President pointed out, listen, China is playing a very crucial role, and the guy who has been sounding the alarm about China since the day he came down the escalator and announced he was running for president has been this guy.
Joe Biden's entire career has been a gift to the Chinese Communist Party and to the calamity of errors that they've made. They made so many errors, and it's been devastating for the American worker.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
it's now a bombardment in the news that Houston will be the new New York City. And the hospitals are now, they're moving ICU patients into extra rooms and so on. What is actually happening?
Probably peaked about 2 weeks ago in terms of initial onset of cases. We're doing really well. We have more capacity than we need to deal with the issue at hand. We did have, the disease lasts about 3 weeks. So about 2 weeks ago in the ERs, we had our peak volume. And then it's been steadily declining. For example, this week was about 25% lower in our system than it was 2 weeks ago. And so you see the deaths peak, a couple of weeks later, the folks that unfortunately pass away from this illness. So we did have our biggest number of deaths in Texas this week. 112 people passed away on one day this week, which means that compared to New York, since the comparison seems to be to New York that we're seeing in the media over and over and over again, we hit 11% of their worst day.
Not quite.
11%.
Not quite the new New York. That's on your worst day.
No. Yeah, that's our worst day. And just to put that in perspective, remember Texas has 50% more people. We've got 50% more people in Texas.
Right.
Than New York. So in order for us to be in a similar level for the rate of death from coronavirus in Texas compared to New York, for the rate of death, we would have to have more than double our worst day every single day for the rest of the year.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Share excerpts of today's show from Larry Elder's YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio and click on the subscribe button.
Hi, Larry. I don't understand how Biden isn't getting any flack for using a day at the beach to advance his cause with blacks, because he actually referred to children as roaches. And nobody ever uttered a word. And, he's so proud of his curly blonde hair, and he loved these kids jumping in his lap. That is really disgusting. And if I wouldn't appreciate anyone, they used to use the term rugrats. Now, maybe if parents said that among each other as a joke, but where is he coming from referring to black children as roaches?
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. I mentioned that the time he said that. I said, was he referring to black kids as roaches? Or was he talking about roaches meaning little kids in general? What the hell was that all about? And as far as I know, nobody really asked about that in the major media. He got a pass for it, as he's gotten a pass for saying that he was with Andy Young and they got arrested trying to visit Nelson Mandela when Nelson Mandela was in prison. And Andy Young says, what are you talking about? We never got arrested. And then Joe Biden, well, I guess I really wasn't arrested.
I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap.
Damn! I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. So I guess he means it in a generic sense. Question is, has Joe Biden ever referred to white kids as roaches? No, that's minor. What I am flabbergasted over is Biden over years lying about his civil rights record. I helped to desegregate lunch counters and theaters in Wilmington, Delaware. I went to black churches. We would strategize on how we were going to move to desegregate all. No evidence of it at all. None. One guy said, yeah, we did some demonstrations up at University of Wilmington, but Biden wasn't there. Has said it for decades. And Jake Tapper even did something on it several months ago and said that Biden's staffers had, quote, gently reminded him, I guess they didn't want to get fired, gently reminded him that it really wasn't true and he ought to stop saying it. And then he said it again. Now, as you well know, President Trump is having difficulty with suburban women. Why aren't suburban women upset with Joe Biden having, at least on 2 occasions, lied about the circumstances under which his first wife was struck and killed and his baby daughter struck and killed in an auto accident? The man that struck and killed Biden's first wife and his young daughter was driving a truck. And Biden, in a speech or some public place, said that the person who struck and killed his wife had decided to drink his lunch. And then he said it a second time. First time, the man's daughter wrote him a letter and said, my father has been suffering grievously over this. But he didn't do anything wrong. He was never cited. He wasn't drunk. Frankly, if anything, based upon what I've read, Biden's wife likely ran through a stop sign. But in any case, how dare Biden publicly say this man was drunk? And he was still alive when he said it. And the woman said that my father's been suffering guilt from the accident, and then you compound it by accusing him falsely of being drunk? And Biden wrote back and said, I've got no problem with you, your family. I understand. It was a terrible thing to have happened. And then said it again. That's pretty stunning. Now be sure to go to our new web show, youtube.com/Larry Elder Show Radio, because we post stuff every day. And also be sure and subscribe to our podcast. You go to my website, LarryElder.com. It's only 99 cents for the first month. And be sure and follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Also be aware that the tax deadline is just passed, but you didn't file, right? Again? Or maybe you filed and now you owe money you can't pay. Now what? You're crazy to try to call the IRS on your own. They will crush you with outrageous penalties and interest. You need to call my friends at Rush Tax Resolution. You see, Rush Tax is the only company I trust and recommend if you're in trouble with the IRS. And I love hearing from listeners who've taken my advice and are now free from their IRS nightmare. Like one listener who owed over $109,000 and Rush Tax settled for $229. Another listener owed over $130K. Rush settled for $100. Now, if you own a business and are behind on payroll taxes, the IRS has the power to shut you down, but Rush Tax can protect you and your business today. 0 complaint history, and they are A+ rated with the BBB. So call 800-485-3021, and Rush Tax will give you a free IRS transcript investigation. That's a $1,500 value for free. 800-485-3021, 800-485-3021, 800-485-3021, RushTaxResolution.com.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom.
Bedwench.
Bootlicker.
Black white supremacist.
Chucking and jiving.
House Negro.
Coon.
Uncle Tom.
Coon.
Coon.
I have a Coon award over there.
Raccoon of the Year award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist,
racial,
racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black?
America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No, our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I told you guys yesterday that I had a chat with my old boss, the president, on Sunday. I always ring him on Sunday. It's so bad, but I think if there's any time I can get through to him, it's Sunday. So I called him before I went to the gym. He calls me back, left a message. They couldn't find him. He called me back soon thereafter. And I had to thank him for something. And I'm going to share it with you now. I was going to ask my producer to read it. But since we have somebody who happens to be the president's attorney in studio, I think I'll get her to read it. I've just received this. This is from the Office of the Press Secretary to the President of the United States. You can ignore the first name listed. Why don't you just read that out? Jenna Ellis Esquire to millions of listeners across the nation.
Oh, this is so exciting. So the Office of the Press Secretary, President Donald J. Trump announces intent to appoint individuals.
That's 888-971-7243. El Dorado's Let Larry Know What's on Your Mind.
Hey, Larry, this is Renee from Phoenix, and I absolutely love your documentary. It was the most insightful documentary that I've seen in a long time, and I thought that I knew everything about Democrats and the history of the Democratic group, and your documentary has opened my eyes, and I absolutely love it. I hope that everybody sees this documentary. Let's please spread the word. God bless. Thank you so much.
God bless. Thank you. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. By the way, we want to use some of your voicemails that you leave us in ads, but we can't do that unless you give us verbal permission to use them. So if you call us and you want to say something about the movie Uncle Tom, please feel free to do so at 888-971-7243. But make sure you also say, you have my permission to use this in an ad. Be sure and say that. Just say I loved, hate it, thought it was mediocre, whatever it is you want to say. Of course, you're going to say you loved it because it was fantastic. And I loved Uncle Tom, and here's what I thought of it. I especially like so-and-so and so-and-so. It made me think about this, reminded me of this. One more point that you should have had, maybe you could have included. I wish you'd expanded more. Whatever it is you say, then say, by the way, you have my permission to use this voicemail in one of your ads. Be sure and say that, or something to that effect. Okay?
Thank you, Larry Elder.
Now, speaking of something to use in an ad, this is an email I got from someone from South Africa. I have a friend who's from South Africa who tells me that I am quite popular in certain circles in South Africa. No, not Trevor Noah, but a different friend. There are other people from South Africa other than Trevor Noah who live in L.A., you know. We don't have quotas on just one. Maybe we should have. Of course, he doesn't live in L.A. He lives in Bel Air in his $20.5 million house where he does his show and bitches and moans and whines about how structural institutional racism holds black people back from getting ahead But and yeah, he said racism in America, racism is the corn syrup that's poured on everything. It's spread on everything. Didn't take him long to become a black victocrat, did it? Picked it up real fast. I remember during the O.J. Simpson case, Johnny Cochran, the lead in the so-called Dream Team, said, race is part of everything in America. Race is part of everything in America. Really? Everything? Boiled eggs? I mean, really? Everything? Eggs have always been white, as far as I know. Although I found out when I went to stay at my grandparents' farm in the summers that the natural color of eggs was not the white that you see in stores. They dye them. I had no idea. And she told me to go to the hen house, and get some eggs. So I'm fishing around getting the eggs. She told me to leave one because the hen needs to have one so she keeps laying. So I stuck my hand in there. I got out this brown thing, and I thought I'd gotten the wrong one, or maybe it needed to hatch a little longer or something. I don't know. And I was surprised to find out that the eggs naturally were not white. How did I get on that? Thank you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Popular in South Africa said wasn't. I forgot what I was saying. I wasn't listening. Okay. Thank you. His name is Rian, R-I-A-A-N. I guess that's a typical name down there. Rian, R-I-A-A-N. I have watched Uncle Tom, and halfway through I started crying and could not stop. The truth is overwhelming in that way. I'm a white guy, born and raised in South Africa. I am young, so I never really experienced the segregated South Africa. Now the country has been ruled by the African National Congress for 26 years. And it has been 26 years of victimhood, huge government programs, welfare, grants, and an absolute destruction of black families. Fatherlessness is rife, crime is rife, murder, rape, epidemic. And it seems our Constitution doesn't really mean anything other than calling it a Constitution. And the narrative is that the masses of black South Africans cannot move forward without the government. They cannot look after themselves. I truly hope South Africa has people like you and that one day we can dig ourselves out of this. I hope to find them somehow. Thanks again. My kindest regards, Rian. I have gotten letters from people all over the world about Uncle Tom. I have been interviewed by Swedish media about Uncle Tom, Australian media, the BBC. You know who I haven't been interviewed by? Any American outlet, major one, aside from Fox. And I've contacted the film reviewers for the major newspapers in the country. No one's written back, or a couple times I've gotten something back saying I'm just not interested, or I only do a certain number of films a year. I can't do them all, or something like that. It is the number one documentary on IMDb. Number one documentary. Look it up yourself. You see a bunch of lists. Number one. This is stunning. And look at all these documentaries that are there. There's one by Ava DuVernay, the one who did the documentary on the Central Park 5 that was full of lies. She has one called The 13th that talks about the incarceration of blacks, and the argument is, I saw half of it, I couldn't take it anymore. The argument is that it's because of racism that black men are being put behind bars. They're not committing crimes, they're just basically being manipulated by the racist criminal justice system. That's what that movie is all about. And many people have told me they've seen her documentary and seen mine. And they say that they are polar opposites. Anyway, nobody from USA Today has contacted me. None of the morning shows, Good Morning America, Today Show, the CBS Morning Show. They have movie reviewers, and I've written to their movie reviewers, and I haven't heard back. This is not just some little project. This is the number one documentary in America, according to IMDb. Sarah is in El Dorado County. It is well named. How you doing, Sarah?
Hi. I was listening to your show a few moments ago. Thank you for having me on, by the way.
Sure.
And I heard you mention that, you thought that people dye eggs to make them white?
Right. That's what I thought in stores. I thought they were dyed. I found out that they were dyed white when I went down to my grandparents' farm, and I found out that the eggs were naturally brown.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's actually, there's different breeds of chickens. Some chickens lay white eggs, others lay brown eggs. So the ones that lay white eggs.
Okay, Sarah, don't go away. You hold over. I want to hear this. Okay, Sarah, please don't go away. AT&T, $76 a month. Verizon Wireless, $83 a month. Sprint, $92 a month. That is what the average family of four is saving a month on their cell phone service by switching over to Pure Talk USA. Looking to cut costs and free up cash on a monthly basis? Start today with Pure Talk USA. Pure Talk covers 99% of Americans, and their call center is based right here in the country, and their chairman and CEO, a U.S. vet. He cares deeply about serving the country, and right now he's doing so by saving you money every month on your wireless bill. Now, I'm a customer, and you should be too. Just dial pound 250 and say keyword Larry Elder. You're going to get unlimited talk, unlimited text, and 2 gigs of data for just $20 a month. Plus, you'll get 50% off your first month. Stop paying too much to big wireless providers. Switch to Pure Talk today. Dial pound 250 keyword Larry Elder. Pound 250 keyword Larry Elder. Pure Talk USA.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
It's now a bombardment in the news that Houston will be the new New York City. And the hospitals are now, they're moving ICU patients into extra rooms and so on. What is actually happening?
Probably peaked about 2 weeks ago in terms of initial onset of cases. We're doing really well. We have more capacity than we need to deal with the issue at hand. We did have, the disease lasts about 3 weeks. So about 2 weeks ago in the ERs, we had our peak volume. And then it's been steadily declining. For example, this week was about 25% lower in our system than it was 2 weeks ago. And so you see the deaths peak, a couple of weeks later, the folks that unfortunately pass away from this illness. So we did have our biggest number of deaths in Texas this week. 112 people passed away on one day this week, which means that compared to New York, since the comparison seems to be to New York that we're seeing in the media over and over and over again, we hit 11% of their worst day.
Not quite.
11%.
Not quite the new New York. That's on your worst day.
No. Yeah, that's our worst day. And just to put that in perspective, remember Texas has 50% more people. We've got 50% more people in Texas.
Right.
Than New York. So in order for us to be in a similar level for the rate of death from coronavirus in Texas compared to New York, for the rate of death, we would have to have more than double our worst day every single day for the rest of the year.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe.
To call the Washington Redskins now they're going to change the name. How about the Washington Wimpies? And they were also saying that the basketball players in the NBA can put their messages on the back of their jerseys instead of their names. I know a name for every single one of them, useful idiots, because they've destroyed the league, and the other folks are going to destroy the NFL. I just hope Major League Baseball doesn't go that way. So at least we'll have one sport, because they're going to destroy the NFL and the NBA with their stupidity. I wish the hell they'd have kept everything out of sports. All this political garbage. Sports are sports. Politics are politics.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Around 6:20 or so p.m. this evening, I'll be on Sean Hannity's show with my good friend Leo Terrell. Also, we're going to be talking later on about the former commissioner saying that Mayor de Blasio is emboldening criminals and that the criminals are going to, quote, completely annihilate New York City. Meanwhile, AOC is blaming financial stress for the increase in crime. Back to Sarah in El Dorado County. Sarah, are you telling me that chickens lay eggs pure white, like the kind we see in the store?
Yeah, there are several kinds of there are different breeds of chickens.
Wow.
Some chickens lay white eggs, others lay brown eggs. The reason why you mostly see white eggs in the store is that the chickens that lay them are skinnier and cheaper to feed. Chickens that lay brown eggs are generally maybe a little bit larger in body size and more expensive to feed.
Sarah, so you're telling me that it is a myth that chicken eggs are dyed white? No one does that?
No, not that I've never heard of that done.
Wow.
There are even, you're not going to believe me, but there are even chickens that lay sort of mint green eggs.
Hold up.
Sarah, I used to spend my summers on my grandparents' farm in Huntsville, Alabama, and I was fascinated by the chickens. And I would always try to grab a little chick, but I could never get one because they were too fast. And I could never grab a hen. But one time, Sarah, I grabbed a little chickie. There were like 4 or 5 all following the mother hen. And I grabbed the little chickie. And I bet you know what happened after I did it.
I don't know. We don't raise we don't hatch our own chickens. We generally buy them as chicks or pullet.
I see.
So I don't know what it used the bathroom.
No, I grabbed the little chickie, and the mother turned towards me and flew right toward my eye, getting ready to gouge it out. And I dropped the chicken. I was so scared, and then everybody scattered. But that just showed you how protective a mother is of her children, because she was coming at me, and chickens are skittish and scared of people, but she came at me, and she was going to do whatever she could to make sure that I let her chicken go, little chick go.
And fun fact, you could tell the color of an egg the chicken will lay by the color of its earlobe.
Color of its earlobe?
Yeah, this is what piece of skin.
Are you sure Sarah's being serious? She's probably... Wow. By the color of an earlobe? Aren't all earlobes the same color? Different colored earlobes?
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I told you guys yesterday that I had a chat with my old boss, the president, on Sunday. I always ring him on Sunday. It's so bad, but I think if there's any time I can get through to him, it's Sunday. So I called him before I went to the gym. He calls me back, left a message. They couldn't find him. He called me back soon thereafter. And I had to thank him for something, and I'm going to share it with you now. I was going to ask my producer to read it, but since we have somebody who happens to be the president's attorney in studio, I think I'll get her to read it. I've just received this. This is from the Office of the Press Secretary to the President of the United States. You can ignore the first name listed. Why don't you just read that out? Jenna Ellis Esquire, to millions of listeners across the nation.
Oh, this is so exciting. So the Office of the Press Secretary, President Donald J. Trump, announces intent to appoint individuals to key administration posts. Today, President Donald J. Trump announced his intent to appoint the following individuals to key positions in his administration, including Dr. Sebastian Gorka of Virginia to be a member of the National Security Education Board for a term of 4 years. Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you. We kept that quiet. We kept that very, very quiet. I got approached maybe 6 weeks ago by the Presidential Appointments Office. This is the National Security Education Board that makes sure that the defense, the whole of defense of the United States, the government, national security arena, has what it needs to do. Its job is supported by universities, think tanks, and that we have the capacity to understand and defeat our enemies.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
January. Congressman, I want to ask you about something I've discussed with a few people this morning. John Durham is the United States attorney who's been tasked with investigating the investigators. Prosecutors don't typically turn in a report. They either indict or don't indict. Both Byron York and Tom Cotton argued for a report in this instance if there aren't any indictments. I expect there will be some indictments. What is your opinion on this?
I'm of the opinion that there will be indictments. That's what I feel. And I think there's two reasons for this. There's been too much going into it. Durham is an excellent prosecutor, and also the Attorney General has given him a lot of latitude and also help in this investigation, opening up doors in the intelligence community and others. What we don't need is another Mueller. What we don't need is another, this giant report that says, well, we came close. No, I believe there's going to be indictments at some point in this process, and I believe that hopefully they will come soon.
You see, I do not want to establish a precedent of prosecutors giving us their opinion and when, hand grenades and horseshoe close counts. I don't like close. I think that is dangerous as can be.
And what we're getting into now with the Comeys of the world and the others, they want to go out and instead of being able to make their case, they just want to plant seeds of doubt. This is the corruption of the left when they can't make their case, they can't sell what they're to the American people what they've got in their pocket that they want to sell to them, so they just plant seeds of doubt. And you're right, reports and half-truths and half-honesty and half kind of stuff are only serving to degrade our criminal justice system.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Some have said that that vaccines can change our DNA. Don't get a vaccine. That this can be something that can be used by the government to track us. That sounds to me like tinfoil hat wearing looniness. I understand caution with regard to vaccines, but would you say that vaccines are something that people can get, or do you take a stand against them for medical reasons?
Well, yeah, I'm not supportive of all vaccines, but something like this, if you're an elderly patient or someone at high risk, yes, I believe you probably should get the vaccine if it's been proven to be of benefit. But someone young, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not an advocate overall for vaccines. But, we need to make sure that the testing is reliable, the studies are reliable, the results are reliable. We're getting a lot of false information from that perspective. But the thing is, Eric, you're entitled to good health as a believer in Christ. You have to follow the rules in the natural. You need to exercise. You need to sleep well. You need to keep your stress down. You need to eat correctly. All of these things are going to help you and build your body up so you can go into the battle daily where this virus is all around us. And if you do that, I believe you'll make it through this battle victoriously.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
And New York City's crime is skyrocketing. Listen to what this brilliant progressive, this smart, charismatic, bubbly, far-left, radical progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had to say over the weekend about rising crime and why it's happening. Get ready, because this is a doozy.
So why is this uptick in crime happening? Well, let's think about it. Do we think this has to do with the fact that there's record unemployment in the United States right now? The fact that people are at a level of economic desperation that we have not seen since the Great Recession? Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night. Maybe it's the fact that unemployment provisions have not been given to everyone. Maybe it's because of the fact that some people still haven't gotten their stimulus checks yet.
Tell me you've ever heard a stupider person in public life in your life. I dare you. Maybe people are hungry and they need to steal a loaf of bread, like Jean Valjean from Les Miserables. the Victor Hugo novel. That's all it, because he was a good man. And all he did was steal a loaf of bread. So when you slaughter a 1-year-old who's at a cookout, or you kill somebody when you're shooting people, and you just want to steal a loaf of bread because maybe your stimulus check hasn't arrived.
Triple 971 SAGE 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll be playing Phone a Bro and also Can You Beat Kirk? And I'll be interviewing Dan Dreesen, the stand-up comedian. Has a brand. Tom Dreesen, excuse me. Who's Dan Dreesen? He's a ball player. Cincinnati Reds, I think. Dan Dreesen, check it out. Tom Dreesen, a longtime comedian for Frank Sinatra. And he was in one of the first interracial comedy teams ever. There is a Dan Dreesen, wasn't he? He's a pitcher, wasn't he? First baseman, okay. 73 to 87. See, look at that. I get my Dreesens confused up. All Dreesens look alike. 888-971-SAG. Before we get into Jake Tapper and Sanjay Gupta going after Andrew Cuomo for his coronavirus victory tour, before we get into what's going on in New York, I want to go back to Sarah, who is in El Dorado County, California. Sarah, how old are you?
Yeah.
Sarah, how old are you?
I'm 16.
You're 16. And Sarah, you said you've never seen a chicken egg that's been dyed in your long years of experience. Since during the break, I looked up to verify what you said, and everything you said is accurate. Everything you said is accurate. And I talked to some people around here, and several people assumed, as I did, that really white eggs had been dyed.
I can see where that assumption would come from. You can actually... Because most times when you go out to the farm, they're brown eggs. But I think the reason why more people on the farm raise brown eggs is because the birds are more substantial and probably better for meat, so you can use them for both.
Mm-hmm.
Because the birds the ones that lay white eggs are called leghorns, and they're often kind of a little bit slight in form. And there are even some birds, like I said, called Americanas that lay mint green eggs. And there are even some birds called olive eggers that lay dark green eggs. Oh, dark green.
Now you were telling us before the break that you can tell the kind of eggs a chicken lays by the color of a chicken's earlobes.
Well, it's called an earlobe, but it's just sort of a piece of skin on the back of the chicken's toward the back of the chicken's head. And so if it's a bright red lobe, it'll be a chicken that lays brown eggs. If it's or possibly green eggs, the Americans also have red lobes. If it's a white lobe, like what the Americanas have, and some other chickens that lay white eggs, it'll lay white eggs. And there's another myth, if you're interested about eggs. Some people think that if you get eggs from the store that are brown, they're healthier than white eggs. That's not true. They actually have all the same nutritional content.
Yeah, I used to believe that for a while, but I heard that was not true. So I'm at least on top of that one. Sarah, I really am impressed with your knowledge. Tell me about you said you don't raise chickens like that. You buy them. Explain to me what you do.
Well, last time we lost our entire flock to dogs or something, and that was recent, back in March. And the place we were getting pullets from closed down, so we did get chicks then. But people were buying up chicks like crazy during the coronavirus, apparently, because people, I guess, are being more self-sufficient. So you have to go there as soon as it opened, on the day that they got a new shipment of chicks, if you wanted to get some. So people were buying them up. But most of the time we get them from pullets, a pullet is a hen that is in between being a chick and being a grown hen. So it's sort of a teenage chicken. It looks like a small hen without much of a comb or waddle.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, you said you lost your chickens to dogs. What happened?
Well, we were away at Disneyland, and we came back, and the coop was, my grandparents had been taking care of the chickens, and they found, after we had left, they found that most of them had been killed and they were just scattered around. They weren't eaten, so it probably was dogs. If it was bears, they would have probably tried to eat it.
Mm-hmm. So, Sarah, do you live on a farm?
No, we live just sort of in the country in El Dorado County, just outside the city of Placerville, which is, the gold rush town. But fun fact, it is actually, it was for a long time, it was illegal to have chickens within the Placerville city limits.
Really?
Which is weird, because even some city slickers can get chickens. It's really weird. But now you're allowed to have hens. You're not allowed to have roosters in the city limits. Well, we don't live in the city limits anyway.
Well, Sarah, tell me about your education. What school do you go to?
I am homeschooled.
That's what I thought. I had a feeling you were. You really, really sound sharp. What are you going to do after you finish homeschooling? Are you going to go to college? What are your plans?
Well, I've graduated now, but I have to.
Wait! You graduated already? You're 16?
Yeah, I'm class of 2020. It wasn't as hard as you might think. It was just sort of, you're a little more flexible with homeschooling.
Okay, so now what's next for Sarah?
So she's going to do a little bit more school as she did before. And eventually probably go to college, but I'm not going to go off to college yet. I'm 16.
Well, what do you think you want to study? What do you think you want to do?
Law, probably.
I'm sorry?
Law.
Probably law? Well, you have plenty of time to think about it. Sarah, thank you so much for calling. You really were delightful.
Thank you. God bless you, sir.
God bless you. So sweet. Man. Learned so much. Yeah, for a while I heard that the brown eggs were healthier. Then I heard that was just a myth, not true. So I've disabused myself of that. But I just assumed that these eggs were somehow dyed because they all seem so white. But I guess that's what it is. Learn something new every day. That's enough for today. Now, the former police commissioner, has blasted the current mayor of New York for emboldening criminals.
You know what, Liz? There's something much bigger. And this, I strongly blame the mayor for emboldening the criminals. I honestly believe at this point, especially today in the aftermath of Mayor de Blasio signing this law enforcement accountability package, this guy is a Marxist Trojan horse that has come into New York City in his last year in office, and he's going to completely annihilate the city. He's allowing the criminals to get out of prison. He's bringing them off of Rikers. He's not putting anybody in jail for things they've done. He's handcuffed the cops, completely handcuffed the cops from doing the job they have to do. And as a result, we're seeing systemic slaughter of black men and women in the communities of color, and he's not doing a damn thing about it.
The problem with that is we have enormous retirements that are in the wake of officers leaving. And then when we look at the $1 billion defunding of...
This is a former NYPD lieutenant.
The police department, we don't have the boots on the ground to come and backfill the attrition rate that we're experiencing in the NYPD. Therefore, there's a disconnect on the ground level. We need the boots on the ground to eradicate the crime pattern that is plaguing our society here in New York. However, the mayor doesn't understand this. He's so focused on painting Black Lives Matter murals in front of one police plaza, in front of Trump Tower, and not focusing on Police Plaza to come and deal with this crime control. This is a horrific engagement or encounter that we're experiencing here in New York, and we need him to not fall at the switch and move forward. The president explained this expressly in his roundtable conversation with law enforcement practitioners. This is something that's apparent. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this thing out. However, we have a disconnected mayor, and unfortunately, we as New Yorkers are unfortunately suffering as a result of failed policies coming from City Hall.
Current NYPD officer.
So I've been studying these tactical videos they got me watching, and here we go. I'm ready. Hi, I'm Officer Chris O'Hannicky, and I'm here with the NYPD, and I would like to go through a consistent tactical video with you guys. When approaching the suspect, make sure that you're in a comfortable body state. Let me show you mine. Hold on. There we go. Hold on. If you can't get your leg up over your thigh, it's okay to leave it perpendicular to the other leg. Maybe like beach pose. Here you go. All right. Make sure a firearm is not facing the subject. You do not want to scare them. And let me begin.
When we come back, a museum curator has resigned after he's accused of racism for saying, yeah, we should still collect art from white artists.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
Bedwench,
bootlicker,
black white supremacist,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom,
coon.
I have a coon award over there. Coon of the Year award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist,
racial,
racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black? America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No. Our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I told you guys yesterday that I had a chat with my old boss, the president, on Sunday. I always ring him on Sunday. It's so bad, but I think if there's any time I can get through to him, it's Sunday. So I called him before I went to the gym. He calls me back, left a message. They couldn't find him. He called me back soon thereafter. And I had to thank him for something. And I'm going to share it with you now. I was going to ask my producer to read it, but since we have somebody who happens to be the president's attorney in studio, I think I'll get her to read it. I've just received this. This is from the Office of the Press Secretary to the President of the United States. You can ignore the first name listed. Why don't you just read that out? Jenna Ellis Esquire, to millions of listeners across the nation.
Oh, this is so exciting. So the Office of the Press Secretary, President Donald J. Trump, announces intent to appoint individuals to key administration posts. Today, President Donald J. Trump announced his intent to appoint the following individuals to key positions in his administration, including Dr. Sebastian Gorka of Virginia to be a member of the National Security Education Board for a term of 4 years. Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you. We kept that quiet. We kept that very, very quiet. I got approached maybe 6 weeks ago by the Presidential Appointments Office. This is the National Security Education Board that makes sure that the defense, the whole of defense of the United States, the government, national security arena, has what it needs to do. Its job is supported by universities, think tanks, and that we have the capacity to understand and defeat our enemies.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
America, we have a country to save. And now, here's Larry Elder.
Hey, Larry, love your show. COVID question. Is it really safe to wear a mask, especially if you have asthma, inhaling your own carbon dioxide? I'd really like to know the answer. And what are the other options?
Hi, Larry. Here's some anecdotal information about the false test reports. A friend of mine, a couple of his buddies went out to Dodger Stadium to get tested. They had made the appointment ahead of time, and the lines were too long. They decided not to go through with it, went home. Later, several days later, I don't know how long, got letters in the mail that said that they each had tested positive. And another friend of ours went to the hospital with kidney stones. They tested him for COVID. He supposedly tested positive, had no signs of COVID, but he had kidney stones, and they wanted to put a ventilator on him. So a lot of corruption, a lot of dishonesty. Thanks, Larry. Talk to you later.
In the national spotlight, Sunday shattering the national record for the most coronavirus cases in a single day with 15,300. Today, Florida once again has more new cases than any other state with more than 12,000. Thanks for joining us. I'm Luann Sorrell.
I'm Charles Belay. Statewide, the positivity rate is now 11%, and that number has been key in the debate over how to fight this virus. Fox 35 investigating the numbers tonight. There are dozens of labs that process tests. On the state's website, we found numerous labs that are only reporting positive test results. So they show a 100% positivity rate. That got our attention.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Mike Lindell is making masks and is giving them to hospitals all around the country. And because you've helped build MyPillow into the fantastic company it is today, Mike Lindell is offering great discounts on all of his products. Just go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and check out the buy one, get one frees on a variety of amazing products. And if you buy Mike Lindell's book, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO, you're going to get free shipping and a $25 gift card. We're talking about the Supima MyPillows, the Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow towels, the Roll and Go Anywhere pillows, the duvet covers, the Giza pillowcases, the bolster pillows, the mattress toppers, the neck pillows. Just go to MyPillow.com, enter promo code Larry, or call 800-890-1843 and be sure to use promo code Larry. David is in Hemet. David, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
Hello, Mr. Elder. Big fan.
Thank you.
I am having discussions with my friends who are strong left-leaning, and they point out the longer sentencing of people of color. Other than this argument, they point to intangible, no facts. Right. How can I refute these claims? Because I am concerned because of privatized prisons and their implications. Also, amazing movie, future California Governor Elder.
Well, David, you said a mouthful. Let me answer your question. This business about black people getting longer sentences because of their race is something that the former AG Eric Holder publicly said. He gave a speech and he talked about pernicious racism. He said, the people like Donald Sterling, the former owners of the Clippers, who blatantly said all sorts of inflammatory racist things. We can deal with people like that. The blatant stuff we got. It's the pernicious racism, his term, that we need to deal with. And one example of said pernicious racism, David, is the example that you just now gave, that black criminals who commit the same crime as committed by a white criminal will get a longer sentence. And it is true. I think the sentence is about 12.5% longer, something like that. I think it's under 20%, but between 12.5 and 20% longer. And the reason for that is because the average black criminal has a longer record than the average white criminal. And your criminal record, convictions, is taken into consideration when the judge determines sentencing. Now, there is a commission called the U.S. Sentencing Commission, federal board that oversees all of this. And they said about this allegation that the sentence is because of racism, they said that there is a difference in sentencing, no question about that, but that the difference can be explained by, quote, legitimate factors, end of quote. So it's just not true. And I've written a piece about this. You can take a look at it, David. Just Google Larry Elder and Eric Holder, pernicious racism, differences in sentencing. And you might even put in U.S. Sentencing Commission, because all those words are in the article. They'll pop right up. And I go over it in a very detailed and I think a very orderly way, what Eric Holder said and why it's wrong. And I've always said this too. You know, Leo Terrell, before he did his 180 and now he sounds a lot more sensible. Leo Terrell is a criminal defense lawyer. There are lots of criminal defense lawyers. Johnny Cochran expanded his law firm all over the country after the O.J. Simpson victory. There are a bunch of criminal defense lawyers. There's also the ACLU. There's also a bunch of nonprofit legal organizations. If it is true that black men are getting longer sentences than white men just because they're black, where the hell are the class action lawsuits against the racist criminal justice system? And if you can make a civil rights violation, sometimes you can get treble damages. So there's a financial incentive to file these lawsuits and to win. Where are they? Where are they? And I mentioned this before. After the O.J. Simpson case, I don't know why Mr. Darden felt a need to do this, but he joined with the ACLU, and he made the argument that blacks were being disproportionately pulled over because of their race. And for the first time, the LAPD was ordered to or agreed to, I can't remember where it was a mandate or where they agreed to do it, because it was coming down the track anyway. They might as well jump ahead of it. And from now on, you have to write down the race of anybody that you stop in a traffic stop. And they before had never done that. And the theory was that once this data are there, then we'll be able to determine exactly the degree to which police are pulling over black people just because they're black. So we've had this data now for probably 20 years. And the police in San Francisco have always had to write down, for around the same period of time, they've had to write down the race of the people they pull over, as have the Oakland PD. So all this data are here. Where's the lawsuits? Because the data do not show what those activists thought it was going to show. Because the data does not tell you anything about behavior. And as I told you about that study that was done in New Jersey, when Chrissy Todd Whitman was the governor of New Jersey, and it found out that on the New Jersey Turnpike, the faster the car, the more likely the motorist was a black person. And that is why they were pulled over, quote, disproportionately. There were two studies that they commissioned to look at this, and both of them came back and said the officers were doing nothing wrong. These cars were going real fast. And unfortunately, the faster the car, the more likely it is that the driver was black. I don't know. You tell me. 888-971. Hope that helps you, David. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
Call in now and join the conversation. 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. Setting fire to the airwaves. It's the Larry Elder Show.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Hey there, folks. I'm talking to Jonathan Jakubowski. The book is Bellwether Blues, and it is about the millennial generation. The election that's coming up, I want to talk about that in the remaining minutes we have together. I've never seen such a clear choice in my life. When you have a Democratic Party that I would say actually has no leadership, they are being led by what we call the mob. They are afraid to think for themselves and afraid to put any daylight between themselves and the mob because they're afraid that they're going to get eaten alive by the mob themselves. And so you have Joe Biden, who's like a husk, practically non-existent. It's the strangest thing because of social distancing and because of the COVID that we don't see him on the stump. We don't see him. It's a bizarre thing. What do you see ahead in this election?
Yeah, I have optimism, especially if conservatives get out from behind the screens and engage in conversation, millennials and other people that are in our generation. I think it's critical for us to have these kinds of conversations because one of the things that we've seen with Democrat mayors and governors is really signs of what's to come. As they oppress the freedoms of Americans through draconian measures that they've taken and through, pure hypocrisy. I think you're in New York, right, Eric? In New York.
Yes,
So
I am.
in that city where Mayor de Blasio is willing to go and march with thousands of people, but then close down synagogues because social distancing measures are a concern. Millennials recognize that. They see that dissonance, but they have to learn from it. They have to hear from somebody who can talk to them about it. So if conservatives step out, if Republicans step out and have these conversations, I'm very optimistic about the results of the 2020 election.
Okay.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was a house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
Bedwench,
bootlicker,
black white supremacist,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom.
coon.
I have a Coon Award over there. Coon of the Year Award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist,
Racial,
racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black? America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No, our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I told you guys yesterday that I had a chat with my old boss, the president, on Sunday. I always ring him on Sunday. It's so bad, but I think if there's any time I can get through to him, it's Sunday. So I called him before I went to the gym. He called
Welcome
me
back to the Pain-Free ReliefFactor.com studios. It's the Sage, Larry Elder.
Hey, Larry, this is Al in Riverside. I just watched Dr. Phil today, and it was about drunk driving. And naturally, Dr. Phil was chastising the drunk driver about his ways. And, of course, the drunk driver keeps guns at home. He said, well, you shouldn't be keeping guns at home. Anything the media can do to run down guns, it will do it. If somebody drops a rifle on his toe, they'll get a foot doctor to say guns are bad for your feet. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's overt, but it's all negative, showing us the 1% and not the 99%.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. I wrote a column once about Dr. Phil and his hostility towards guns. And I got a phone call from a producer of his show who said he saw your article and he'd like you to come on the show. And we're going to do a show about things that Dr. Phil has said that people have challenged. And we'd like to have you come on and challenge his position on guns. I said, great. And so we did an interview, and I told her how full of it he was, and I gave her study after study after study, and this, that, and this, and more guns, less crime, and after, well, needless to say, I never got called for that. How did I get on that? The National Association of Police Organizations has endorsed President Trump. This is a big deal. It's a big deal. They endorsed Obama Biden in 2008. I get that. I don't get why they would endorse him in 2012, which they did. This is after the Cambridge police acted stupidly stunt, which, in my opinion, said all you need to know about Obama's willingness to play the race card if it advances his political interest. So they now switched over to President Trump. And in a letter, they say, our endorsement recognizes your steadfast and very public support for our men and women on the front lines especially during this time of unfair and inaccurate opprobrium being directed at our members by so many. And one of those who directed some misinformation is Fox's Juan Williams. I heard him today driving in and talking about Trump saying, as it is true, that more whites are killed by the police than blacks are, and the president got pounded by, well, not pounded, but Juan Williams said, well, it is true, though, that blacks are 2.5 times more likely to be shot by the police, and that is a calculation that should have been factored in. We're going to address that in just a few minutes. 888. Yeah, let's hear it.
Appealing to racial grievance as well. I think you have to understand the facts just to put everything in perspective, that violent crime is down sharply in this country since the early 90s. This year, even with COVID and the protest, crime is down. But lately, there's been a spike in some cities in gun violence. Note that New York this year had the same amount of gun violence it had in 2015. But as I said to you in an earlier show, the violence is concentrated in poor black and Hispanic neighborhoods, largely among the drug dealers and the gangs.
And he proceeded to say that blacks are 2.5 times more likely than whites to be killed by the police. And the president didn't mention that. Well, the president also didn't mention that a young black man is anywhere from 8 to 10 times more likely to be a victim of a homicide. Didn't mention that either. And nobody said anything when Juan said that. I would have expected one of them to say something. Excuse me, Juan. Yes, it is true that that blacks are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by the police than whites. It is also true that a young black man is substantially more likely to be a victim of a homicide than a young white male. That's the point, and nobody said anything. Now, AOC is blaming financial stress for the increase in crime in New York.
Well, this uptick in crime, the NYPD themselves have told a story that's disproven by their own data. At first, the NYPD, they went out and they said, okay, this uptick in crime is happening because of bail reform, because of all of these reforms that we had now. Wait, but they just released data a couple weeks ago that showed that out of almost all the people who have been found to have kind of committed crimes, etc.
Found to have kind of committed crimes. You know how you kind of commit a crime, kind of murder somebody. By the way, I posted on Twitter a picture of a gentleman with a big screen TV that he stole from the store, and the caption says, "Man living in AOC's district steals 20-foot long loaf of bread." Pretty funny. Check it out. Now, Jake Tapper and Dr. Sanjay Gupta went after Andrew Cuomo because he's been doing a victory lap claiming that his astute handling of the coronavirus is why New York got things under control. And they kind of reminded us of a few things that sort of went wrong in New York. All of that and more. Also, Mary Trump, Donald Trump's niece, has a book out claiming that, among other things, he paid somebody to take his SAT score. And she was interviewed about that and didn't hold up very well under cross-examination. We'll be talking about that later on. Now, Kent in Arkansas said this about Relief Factor. "I have been taking Relief Factor for about 3 months, and I am amazed at how much my pain has decreased. In rainy weather, I would be in ridiculous pain, just wanting to crawl in bed and cry. As of this writing, it has been raining all day, but I feel just fine. Before Relief Factor, I never had a day when something didn't hurt. Now, most days, I have great quality of life. I consistently take 3 packets a day, and I do not mind the extra expense because it's better than the pain. How about you? ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
It's now a bombardment in the news that Houston will be the new New York City. And the hospitals are now they're moving ICU patients into extra rooms and so on. What is actually happening?
Probably peaked about 2 weeks ago in terms of initial onset of cases. We're doing really well. We have more capacity than we need to deal with the issue at hand. We did have, the disease lasts about 3 weeks. So about 2 weeks ago in the ERs, we had our peak volume. And then it's been steadily declining. For example, this week was about 25% lower in our system than it was 2 weeks ago. And so you see the deaths peak, a couple of weeks later, the folks that unfortunately pass away from this illness. So we did have our biggest number of deaths in Texas this week. 112 people passed away on one day this week, which means that compared to New York, since the comparison seems to be to New York that we're seeing in the media over and over and over again, we hit 11% of their worst day.
Not quite
11%.
Not quite the New York. That's on your worst day.
No. Yeah, that's our worst day. And just to put that in perspective, remember Texas has 50% more people. We've got 50% more people in Texas.
Right.
Than New York. So in order for us to be in a similar level for the rate of death from coronavirus in Texas compared to New York, for the rate of death, we would have to have more than double our worst day every single day for the rest of the year.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Some have said that that vaccines can change our DNA. Don't get a vaccine. That this can be something that can be used by the government to track us. That sounds to me like tinfoil hat wearing looniness. I understand caution with regard to vaccines, but would you say that vaccines are something that people can get, or to take a stand against them for medical reasons?
Well, yeah, I'm not supportive of all vaccines, but something like this, if you're an elderly patient or someone at high risk, yes, I believe you probably should get the vaccine if it's been proven to be of benefit. But someone young, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not an advocate.
Share excerpts of today's show from Larry Elder's YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio and click on the subscribe button.
Hi, Larry. I saw something that made me laugh kind of in a sad way the other day. I'm driving through La Mesa, a small town here in San Diego area, on Spring Street, and right at the corner of Allison and Spring, there's 2 banks were burned to the ground. I mean, to the ground. And now there's one is a chase that's left over, just a pile of twisted metal, literally. You can probably Google Earth it. And the little American flag and some platitudes written on the fence there, right? So they have a sign there. It says, this branch temporarily closed. Yeah, you think so? I mean, if you look at it, I start laughing. I go, yeah, I'm going to go up there and knock on the door. Are you open? I mean, it's ridiculous. The effects are the leftovers from the peaceful, quote-unquote, protest. You have to see it to believe it. It looks like literally like a nuclear bomb, a small little portion there, what's left over.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. A Democrat House member says we pushed Biden much further to the left towards a government health care takeover. Nick Cannon, the man who made the anti-Semitic comments with the former member of the rap group called Public Enemy, after saying he's not going to apologize for his anti-white, anti-Semitic comments, and furthermore saying that Viacom should apologize to him for demanding that he apologize, and furthermore, I want to take over ownership of my show. Well, it didn't take very long, but he's now apologized, put a very lengthy apology on Facebook, and now Viacom says, well, all is forgiven. He's very, very sincere about apologizing for the things he said about Jews. What about the things he said about whites? All of that and more. Now, the caller was talking about how disruptive the protests have become to our daily lives. Damiani Felder is one of the young black conservatives in my documentary, Uncle Tom. And he's out minding his own business, trying to dine in Texas, and this is what happens.
Check it out. Check it out. See? She's cursing. We got little kids out here.
Black Lives Matter protesters were harassing restaurant diners.
She's still cursing. This is the face. This is the face of mental retardation. Look at it. That's the entire problem with this right now. Is they're out here right now trying to act a fool. That's all they want to do. That's all they want to do. That's all they want to do. See, here we go. Here we go.
Keep in mind, the ban on large events doesn't apply to protests or demonstrations.
See, here we go. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. See? They create the unrest. And then they get upset when someone actually speaks up for themselves. That's the problem. See, we got more people coming right now. That's all they want to do. That's all they want to do. This is not what we should be doing. This is not how we should react.
This goes on for several minutes, and if anything was accomplished, I'd love to know what it is. How many of these, how many people have died in protest since George Floyd died? I heard 20. Billions of dollars in property damage. Property values suppressed for years to come. Job creation suppressed for years to come. People leaving. Businesses leaving. Tell me exactly what's been accomplished. And again, AOC blames financial stress for the increase in crime in New York. What does financial stress have to do with the increase in murders? Trey Gowdy said this about AOC's analysis of why crime has gone up in New York.
I think anyone that believes in logic will take issue with her stance. I mean, you can't be evicted in New York, so how can you be killing people because you're being evicted? This is a state and a city run by Democrats, so if they're having a hard time getting bread, she needs to look at her own party and not blame Republicans. We don't run New York.
Craig is in Houston, Texas. Craig, you're on the Larry Elder Show.
Hey, Larry.
Hey, Craig.
We spoke on yesterday, and you didn't give me a chance to really speak out. You were cutting me off often. But I wanted to ask you about the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. Do you believe that once you commit a crime, you should be considered a slave, a past slave?
Do I consider when you commit a crime, should you be considered a past slave?
Yeah, a slave or a past slave, based on the 13th Amendment.
Well, the 13th Amendment has an exception for people that have committed crimes.
Yeah, so do you agree with the 13th Amendment that
yes.
Because you commit a crime in your life, you should be considered a slave?
The 13th Amendment doesn't say that. It said there should be no slave, no involuntary servitude in America except for people that have been duly committed of committing a crime. That's what it says. I don't consider people who have committed a crime and who are working or being forced to work to be slaves. I consider them to be criminals who are working off their punishment. A slave didn't do anything wrong. A slave was just either captured or sold into slavery. He didn't do anything wrong. He's not working off any kind of crime. So I don't consider the two of them to be the same. I know you do, but I don't. You think people behind bars are slaves? Hold on, Craig. Hold on, Craig. You think if I murder somebody and I go to jail and I'm forced to work, I'm a slave?
No, you're not. Look, Larry, here's what I'm getting at. Once the slaves are free, the Ku Klux Klan were hired to go out and capture the.
You mean Democrats? You mean Democrats?
You can call them what you want.
Right.
I'm not a Democrat, so it's funny how you and your viewers kind of classify me as a Democrat.
I didn't call you anything. You said, why are you so defensive? Why are you so defensive, Craig? I just said they were Democrats. That's all.
No.
And then you said I'm not a Democrat. Didn't say you were. Why are you so defensive?
No, but I want to get at this policing thing because
wait. Let's finish the 13th Amendment thing. What's the point you're trying to make? The 13th Amendment outlawed slavery, except when you commit a crime, you can be forced by the state to labor. That's not the same thing as a slave to me. Maybe it is to you, but not to me.
No, but do you see the incentive as to why there will be policemen back in the day rooted in the police movement.
Craig, there's lots of things that happened back in the day that were awful. People used to get lynched back in the day. We're talking about 2020. 2020 right now. Do you think that, Craig, do you think the criminal justice system is racist? Craig, do you think the criminal justice system is racist?
It has racist components, meaning
Okay, give me the racist component.
Why is cocaine considered a less harder drug than crack cocaine when you have to use cocaine?
Okay, you know that those disparities have been done away with.
No, they have not been done away with, because the lasting impact of that is still being felt in the black community, and that's why I call you again, because the lasting impact of the fact that people were punished more severely for crack than for powder. Is that what you're telling me? It destroyed the black family.
Oh, for crying out loud. Craig, honestly, Craig, what percentage of people do you think are behind bars for drug-related offenses?
You tell me.
No, Craig. You're the one. You're the one who blamed it. You're the one who accused the drug thing of causing all these people to be behind bars and losing families. So I would assume you'd have some idea of what percentage of the people behind bars committed drug-related offenses. What percentage do you think it is?
Well, I know that 50%. You're 50% more likely to be committed of a crime of drug when you're a black.
The answer is roughly 15% of people behind bars committed a drug-related offense. Most of the people.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Every Republican must run against the Democrats and the left, not just his or her opponent. This is almost never done, maybe never done. Voters, please understand that when you vote Democrat, you get chaos. You get an undermining of everything good in this country. You are voting for the left. Even if you are a liberal, you are voting for the left. You are not voting for liberals. So, in a nutshell, we have to make the referendum on the left. While they make the referendum about one man, we are making about an ideology that is crushing the country. Why don't Republicans do that?
Too many of them don't understand it. They don't understand what we're in the midst of, the great debate between socialism and free enterprise. We are in the midst of also the great debate between tyranny and freedom.
Yes.
And look, a lot of people who run for office, who get elected to Congress, it becomes their identity. There's something where you look in the mirror and you see the reflection back and you say, I'm a senator. I'm really damn important. There's an old joke that politics is Hollywood for ugly people. There's enormous truth to that. Mm-hmm. And what happens is people desperately want to stay in elected office. It becomes who they are. God, and the terror of being out of elected office, it is a horrifying void because they don't know who they are.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Joe Biden, good to see you, sir. And
America, we have a country to save. And now, here's Larry Elder.
Hey, Larry. Thanks for the great job you do. Hey, this Cortez lady is saying that people are rioting and looting and everything to get some bread possibly to feed their kids or something. Anyway, she is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, Larry. They are stealing televisions and expensive purses, and I don't know how she could possibly think anybody in America could believe that crap. Thanks, Larry.
I think anyone that believes in logic will take issue with her stance. I mean, you can't be evicted in New York, so how can you be killing people because you're being evicted? This is a state and a city run by Democrats, so if they're having a hard time getting bread, she needs to look at her own party and not blame Republicans.
I find your arguments strewn with gaping defects in logic.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Bryan, Alabama, after taking Relief Factor for 3 weeks, at least 90% of my pain is now gone. The pain had begun to limit my mobility and my ability to get things done at work and at home. I'm now amazed at the relief I have gotten. I should have taken Relief Factor a year ago when I first heard about it. How about you? 3-week quick start can be at your door in just a couple of days. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, or call 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384. There is a new book by Donald Trump's niece making all sorts of allegations. And the one that's probably gotten the most attention is she claimed that Donald Trump paid somebody to take his SAT exam. But when asked about it, I don't think she held up very well under very soft cross-examination. And a Democrat lawmaker from Washington says that we pushed Biden much further to the left towards government healthcare takeover. We're going to be talking about that on Hannity around 6:20. And I'll be, again, pitted with my partner now, Leo Terrell. I want to say something a little bit more about this bogus notion that because of the war on drugs, it's caused the black family to become decimated. The welfare state is what's done the black family in. About 15% or so of people behind bars are behind bars because of a drug-related offense. Most of the people are behind bars because they hurt somebody. And regarding the war on drugs, who was it who was standing right next to Ronald Reagan when he signed far more punitive laws regarding drug dealing and drug trafficking? Charlie Rango. Who was it that demanded from Bill Clinton and others that they do something about this crime? Congressional Black Caucus. 50% of the Congressional Black Caucus supported the so-called crime bill of 1994 that is now deemed to be racist. Is this thing on? Please. And you think people that behind bars because they stole drugs were out there being fathers and taking their kids to the library and taking their kids to the museum? Are you kidding me? I'm Larry Elder.
Larry Elder. All true, all devastating.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom.
Bedwench.
Bootlicker.
Black white supremacist.
Chucking and jiving.
House Negro.
Coon.
Uncle Tom.
Coon.
I have a Coon Award over there. Coon of the Year Award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist.
Racial. Racist.
Racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black? America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No. Our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I told you guys yesterday that I had a chat with my old boss, the president, on Sunday. I always ring him on Sunday. It's so bad, but I think if there's any time I can get through to him, it's Sunday. So I called him before I went to the gym. He calls me back, left a message. They couldn't find him. He called me back soon thereafter. And I had to thank him for something, and I'm going to share it with you now. I was going to ask my producer to read it, but since we have somebody who happens to be the president's attorney in studio, I think I'll get her to read it. I've just received this. This is from the Office of the Press Secretary to the President of the United States. You can ignore the first name listed. Why don't you just read that out? Jenna Ellis Esquire, to millions of listeners across the nation.
Oh, this is so exciting. So the Office of the Press Secretary, President Donald J. Trump announces intent to appoint individuals to key administration posts. Today, President Donald J. Trump announced his intent to appoint the following individuals to key positions in his administration, including Dr. Sebastian Gorka of Virginia to be a member of the National Security Education Board for a term of 4 years. Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you. We kept that quiet. We kept that very, very quiet. I got approached maybe 6 weeks ago by the Presidential Appointments Office. This is the National Security Education Board that makes sure that the defense, the whole of defense of the United States, the government, national security arena, has what it needs to do. Its job is supported by universities, think tanks, and that we have the capacity to understand and defeat our enemies.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
January. Congressman, I want to ask you about something I've discussed with a few people this morning. John Durham is the United States attorney, has been tasked with investigating the investigators. Prosecutors don't typically turn in a report. They either indict or don't indict. Both Byron York and Tom Cotton argued for a report in this instance if there aren't any indictments. I expect there will be some indictments. What is your opinion on this?
I think I'm of the opinion that there will be indictments. That's what I feel. And I think there's two reasons for this. There's been too much going into it. Durham is an excellent prosecutor, and also the Attorney General has given him a lot of latitude and also help in this investigation, opening up doors in the intelligence community and others. What we don't need is another Mueller. What we don't need is another, this giant report that says, well, we came close. No, I believe there's going to be indictments at some point in this process, and I believe that hopefully they will come soon.
You see, I do not want to establish a precedent of prosecutors giving us their opinion and when, hand grenades and horseshoe close counts. I don't like close. I think that is dangerous as can be.
And what we're getting into now with the Comeys of the world and the others, they want to go out and instead of being able to make their case, they just want to plant seeds of doubt. This is the corruption of the left when they can't make their case, they can't sell what they're to the American people what they've got in their pocket that they want to sell to them, so they just plant seeds of doubt. And you're right, reports and half-truths and half-honesty and half kind of stuff are only serving to degrade our criminal justice system.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Some have said that that vaccines can change our DNA. Don't get a vaccine. That this can be something that can be used by the government to track us. That sounds to me like tinfoil hat wearing looniness. I understand caution with regard to vaccines, but would you say that vaccines are something that people can get, or do you take a stand against them for medical reasons?
Well, yeah, I'm not supportive of all vaccines, but something like this, if you're an elderly patient or someone at high risk, yes, I believe you probably should get the vaccine if it's been proven to be of benefit. But someone young, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not an advocate overall for vaccines. But, we need to make sure that the testing is reliable, the studies are reliable, the results are reliable. We're getting a lot of false information from that. perspective. But the thing is, Eric, you're entitled to good health as a believer in Christ. You have to follow the rules in the natural. You need to exercise. You need to sleep well. You need to keep your stress down. You need to eat correctly. All of these things.
Triple 971 SAGE 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. One more thing about the gentleman who called and suggested that, I think he was suggesting that the criminal justice system is racist because black people who are behind bars having dealt crack, and at one time there was greater punishment for crack than there was for powder. That discrepancy has been eliminated, but I'll tell you who did not eliminate it when asked to do so. Bill Clinton. Oh, yeah. Black lawmakers came to him and said, this is not fair. You're punished more severely for dealing crack than you're dealing powder cocaine. The crack dealers were more likely to be black. The powder cocaine ones were more likely to be white. And as a result, you're finding this kind of difference in our criminal justice system. It's not fair. Please change it. And Clinton didn't do it. And the reason he didn't do it is because he wanted to be perceived as tough on crime, not a squishy, typical Democrat, and didn't do it. And they still love him. And when my mom used to come on my show every Friday, as she did for years, by the way, my show's never been the same without her, but we discussed this allegation that the CIA put crack in the inner city, an allegation that's been refuted by the LA Times, New York Times, and the Washington Post. And they would love to have found it because they all hated Ronald Reagan. And they said, yeah, Ronald Reagan used the Contras, and the Contras were dealing drugs, but it had nothing to do with it starting it or somehow elevating it. It was already going on. And yet they looked the other way because they thought there was a higher purpose. Not saying it was good or bad. I'm just saying you cannot make the argument that it was the CIA that put drugs into the inner city, which is what Gary Webb, that former reporter, said with the Mercury Sun. There was even a movie about it, starring Robert Downey Jr. Anyway, the LA Times, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, all Reagan haters would have loved to confirm the allegation that was made by people like Maxine Waters, denied by the CIA. In fact, the CIA came out to LA and did a town hall addressing the allegation that they put drugs in the inner city. When has a CIA director come to a town and addressed angry mobs claiming that they put drugs in the inner city? And he stood there and he took it and answered every question. People weren't satisfied, but he said, we would put drugs in the inner city. Why would we do? What would be the point in doing that? And my mother said, even if they did, quote, put drugs in the inner city, they can't make me take them. They can't make me use them. They can't make me deal them. They can't make me sell them. We need to take responsibility, she said. So that's my long answer to you, sir, and I appreciate the call. I really do. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Now, Nick Cannon, after saying, I don't take back anything I said, I'm not going to apologize. In fact, you should apologize to me, Viacom, for demanding that I apologize. And furthermore, I want ownership of this show that you're trying to take away from me. He has now since apologized, put a long piece on Facebook, didn't seem to apologize for the things he said about calling white people savages, but we'll get to that in a second. Here's what he and Professor Griff, who was kicked out of Public Enemy, the rap group, because of his anti-Semitism, said.
Who are they? When we speak of, because this is where it truly is, and when we talk about the six corporations, when we go as deep as the Rothschild, centralized banking, those the 13 families. the bloodlines that control everything, even outside of America. When we talk about the people who, if we were truly the children of Israel, and we're defining who the Jewish people are, because I feel like if we actually can understand that construct, then we can see that there is no hate involved. When we talk about the lies, the deceit, how the fake dollar controls all of this, then maybe we can get to the reason why they wanted to silence you, why they want to silence Minister Farrakhan, and they want to throw that we are having hate speech when it's never hate speech, when it's not. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people, when we are the same people that who they want to be. That's our birthright.
That's our birthright.
So if that's truly our birthright, there's no hate involved.
It's not.
How did this message get so misconstrued?
Wow. So he got fired from Viacom and then publicly said, "No, I'm not apologizing. You apologized to me. I don't take anything back." And then he apologized. By the way, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote a piece criticizing athletes for not criticizing the anti-Semitic comments made by people like Deshaun Jackson and others. And Ice Cube called Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who Ice Cube was also accused of making anti-Semitic statements and posting anti-Semitic things that were said and done by Louis Farrakhan. He accused Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of being a Judas, selling out for his pieces of silver. That's what he said about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Ice Cube. Wow. We having fun yet? Now, I wonder what they're going to say about Charles Barkley.
One of the other things that's happening with all of these seasons is all these social justice messages, the back and forth over the anthems, over the flag, over standing or kneeling, the words that are going to be on the backs of the jerseys. You know, is there too much politics in sports?
Well, I think what's happening now, we turn it into a circus. We're going to spend all our time, instead of talking about racial equality and racial justice and economic justice, we spend all our time worried about who's kneeling and who's not kneeling, what things are being said on buses, what's being said on jerseys. I think we're missing the point. We need police reform, we need prison reform, and we need those are number 1 and 2 things we need to focus on. We need the cops, but we need the good cops out there policing the bad cops. Like I say, we need police reform and prison reform, but the media, we all got a job to do, and they're going to spend all their time on what's on somebody's jersey and what's on the buses and who's kneeling and who's not kneeling, and that's going to defeat the purpose. My concern is this turning this thing into a circus instead of trying to do some good stuff.
Notice that people just easily say, we need prison reform, we need police reform, and they just move right on. Can you be more specific? And why weren't you making the demands for police reform and prison reform when you know who was in office? Now, back to Nick Cannon. He then proceeded to trash white people.
Then let's go to what it really is then. When we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as guys and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. So then when you see what, Dr. Francis C. Welsling talked about is that...
I have a headache. You know who he sounds like?
Before we vote on your request for parole, we do have some questions. Do you think you'll be able to adjust to life on the outside?
Allow me to practicalize myself. Suppositorily speaking, my incarceration has forced, you understand, the ventilation of, shall I say, my dairy air. And upon my discharge, I will ejaculate my mind to the prophylactic of the bowels of society.
Then let's go to what it really is then. When we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as guys and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they...
Before we vote on your request for parole, we do have some questions.
So let me clarify, or in other words, I'd probably teach.
All right. right, if there are no further questions, let us put this to a vote.
So now he keeps his job. Viacom forced him to apologize, and he did apologize. But he didn't apologize for all the things he said about white people being closer to animals, being true savages. They lack self-esteem. That's why they're so warlike. Really? Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I don't know why anybody would misconstrue. I don't dislike Jews. I just, I was just quoting Farrakhan, who dislikes Jews. Doesn't mean I dislike Jews. I'm Larry Elder.
You're listening to The Larry Elder Show.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
And New York City's crime is skyrocketing. Listen to what this brilliant progressive, this smart, charismatic, bubbly, far-left, radical progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had to say over the weekend about rising crime and why it's happening. Get ready, because this is a doozy.
So why is this uptick in crime happening? Well, let's think about it. Do we think this has to do with the fact that there's record unemployment in the United States right now? The fact that people are at a level of economic desperation that we have not seen since the Great Recession? Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night. Maybe it's the fact that unemployment provisions have not been given to everyone. Maybe it's because of the fact that some people still haven't gotten their stimulus checks yet.
Tell me you've ever heard a stupider person in public life in your life. I dare you. Maybe people are hungry and they need to steal a loaf of bread, like Jean Valjean from Les Miserables, the Victor Hugo novel. That's all because he was a good man. And all he did was steal a loaf of bread. So when you slaughter a 1-year-old who's at a cookout, or you kill somebody when you're shooting people and you just want to steal a loaf of bread because maybe your stimulus check hasn't arrived yet.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Now, why would people move to a racist country? Are Jews moving to Iran? Are Muslims moving to China? I mean, we live with the absurd as now normal, because it's such a good place where most people who work hard can truly aspire to the American dream, which is now, anyway, a fading notion, the American dream. The left has made it the American nightmare, led by the New York Times and CNN. And yes, George Soros, another $100 million. Was it? I want to look at the figure. Radical organizations. He's as close to evil as you can get in the nonviolent world. I wrote this many years ago. It is amazing to me that there are people who say if you attack George Soros, it's anti-Semitic. But there is nothing to which the left would not stoop in making a case. To attack George Soros? The man was ethnically born a Jew. He has nothing to do with being Jewish. He's further from Judaism than the majority of evangelical Christian. God, we live in a perverse world because of these people on the left.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending.
Larry's father, Staff Sergeant Randolph Elder, says hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. And now, here's Larry Elder.
Hey, Larry, I can't wait to see your movie. I got a question for you. Is the mayor of Seattle and the governor of Washington State going to be held accountable for the murder of the person in Chaz or Chops or whatever we want to call it, just like the 3 policemen who were standing around doing nothing in Minneapolis? This governor and this mayor stood around and did nothing to protect people. I want to know if they're going to be charged just like the police. All right, keep up the good work, bud.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, LeafEcky.com studio. The gentleman who struck the highest uniformed NYPD cop in the head and caused him to suffer bleeding has now been arrested. And remember, this high-ranking cop had knelt in support of Black Lives Matter, and that was his reward. He was hit in the head by a man who appeared to be black, striking him with some sort of, looks like a steel rod or something. 888-971-SAGE is the number. Andrew is in Stanhope, New Jersey. Andrew, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Always nice to hear from you.
Hey, what's up, Larry?
How you doing?
The caller that was talking about the disparity between crack and powder cocaine. I'm old enough to have lived through the 80s. Maybe he's too young, but crack cocaine devastated black inner city, Newark, in New York City, Brooklyn, Bronx. And when those stricter laws came in, I was so happy what I saw, not because I'm racist, the opposite. There were drug dealers when I would drive through Newark prior to the stricter laws. And then when those were enacted, just like overnight, it just dramatically dropped. There used to be like several guys would try to wave me down to sell drugs. And then it almost disappeared. There would be a few, but it dramatically, and that helped the poorest, lowest income black people in the housing projects in Newark and cities all over. So it helps the people. Just like I make a comparison, like most of the people in the high crime areas that are black, they don't want less cops. They want more cops because they're not criminals. They're victims, and their sons are victims of the shootings. And so I just want to say that's why the disparity. And you always point out that the NAACP or the Black Caucus supported it, and black Democrats in New York City totally supported it and campaigned for it because it was ravaging communities. And now it's no longer, which is great. And lastly, one time I did interview an NAACP leader, Summit, New Jersey, about 4 years ago. They had a rally, like an anti-violence by the police. And I asked them, like what you would say, I would say, well, if your goal is to help the advancement of colored people, why aren't you talking about the out-of-wedlock birth rate? And he looked real strange, like he agreed with me. I said, that's Obama and others admit that's more devastating or more harmful than racism. And he said, well, my friend, the professor in Rutgers, Dr. Price, he started that in Newark, which is great, but then he passed away soon after. So they admit that that's the number one problem, yet they don't focus on it. They don't have, like, free counseling. They don't, what they were vital. They were great in the past, but the past 30 years, they're, like a parody. Why don't they have services for jobs where African-American people could go in for job search, job training, college prep for drug, help the people. Like, how are they actually helping the people now? Just going to cocktail parties or having liberal.
Right. And Andrew, thanks for calling, as always. And you, of course, point out something really important. And community leaders wanted stiffer penalties for those dealing crack. There were pastors in New York demanding things be done. And when Ronald Reagan signed more strict anti-drug laws, standing right behind him as he signed the bill was Charlie Rangel, the longtime congressman from Harlem. Now, Rangel did not support the 1994 crime bill, but more than half of the Congressional Black Caucus, as Andrew pointed out, did. Now, how is that racist if the majority of black congresspersons supported this racist law? Anyway, thank you very much for calling. Dr. Sanjay Gupta at CNN and Jake Tapper of CNN both went after Cuomo because Cuomo suggested that he made all sorts of wonderful decisions, and that is why New York has its handle on the coronavirus pandemic. Here's what they said.
New York's Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo seems to be on something of a victory tour, congratulating the state and himself for defeating the virus, even selling this poster, which shows his state getting over the mountain by bringing down the curve during the 111 days of hell, as the governor put it. The poster includes references to his daughters and a boyfriend, little inside jokes. There are no illustrations, however, of the more than 32,000 dead New Yorkers, the highest death toll by far of any state. No rendering on that poster of criticism that Governor Cuomo ignored warnings, no depiction of the study that he could have saved thousands of lives had he and Mayor de Blasio acted sooner, no painting there on the poster of his since rescinded order that nursing homes take all infected patients in.
And he is a Democrat governor, right? And that's the point. This whole thing has been confusing. The Chinese government lied to the World Health Organization that parroted the lies. Dr. Fauci was talking about how face masks give people a false sense of security and that we got this pandemic, nothing to worry about. He was wrong. I asked Tom Sowell what he would have done. And he said, given the confusion, given the misinformation, given the lack of data, he doesn't think he would have done anything different than Trump did, which is to struggle through. You know who the high-risk people are? You know what kinds of things we can do to mitigate the virus by social distancing, by avoiding large crowds, by wearing masks? And there are all sorts of downsides to locking up our economy. We've talked about them. So far now, there are over 100,000 small businesses that have shut down, never to return. Who knows how many people have gotten into depression, drug abuse, alcoholism, spousal abuse? Who knows? Matt is in the Bay Area in California. Matt, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Mr. Elder, my God, what an honor.
Thank you.
Calling from your home state, the Bay Area. So let me quickly start by saying how much I love the movie. It was very well done, very impactful. I've been sharing it with everyone I can. I'm thankful people like you exist, so keep up the good work, sir.
Thank you.
Anyways, I recently saw a great new interview with Dr. Sowell and Mark Levin. Dr. Sowell shared his concern that if Joe Biden gets elected, the country might be going past the point of no return. So while I agree with this, I'm curious, where do you think the future of our country is going? I'd also ask, is the recent radicalism that we've seen, do you think it's defeatable, or is it a force gaining power that eventually will take over? I didn't live through the 60s, but I know you did, so I know there's a lot of parallels.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just lastly say that when we watch the media today, they really only reveal a more polarizing look in the society. So one would think that the entire country is experiencing some sort of race-based apocalypse, but I don't think that's necessarily reality. I think a lot of people quietly reject radical movements like BLM. So between the 60s and the times like the Rodney King riots, is this the worst you've ever seen in the country?
Okay, I will address this on the other side. Matt, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Larry will be right back. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
There's no reason to get all bent out of shape because professional sports are changing names of mascots. Who cares? Really? You want put your money where your mouth is and go vote. Go vote. Vote out the party that you believe is pushing the destructiveness upon this country. The lawlessness. Do you really care? Please tell me. I want to know. Are you mad about the Washington Redskins abolishing their own team mascot? I mean, here's the headline in the New York Post. Washington Redskins officially retiring the nickname that is considered by many to be a racist slur. Many people sit around saying, oh, yeah, it's racist. The Redskins? Listen, you know the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame are next. What's with the Buccaneers? Tampa Bay Buccaneers, pirates that raped and pillaged. You know how bad the pirates were? You got to get rid of the Buccaneers. That's all. Do it. And maybe nobody will go to another football game again or turn on another football game. Or they'll say they won't, but they will. Who cares? Vote. The only thing that matters right now is the government that espouses views and policies that reflect the American people. And there's going to be people left out. I don't know what's going to happen November 3rd. I have no idea. None. Zero. I have no idea. Republicans are either going to win in a landslide or they're going to be decimated, and we may never be coming back politically.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Every Republican must run against the Democrats and the left, not just his or her opponent. This is almost never done, maybe never done. Voters, please understand that when you vote Democrat, you get chaos. You get an undermining of everything good in this country. You are voting for the left. Even if you are a liberal, you are voting for the left. You are not voting for liberals. So, in a nutshell, we have to make the referendum on the left. While they make the referendum about one man, we are making about an ideology that is crushing the country. Why don't Republicans do that?
Too many of them don't understand it. They don't understand what we're in the midst of the great debate between socialism and free enterprise. We are in the midst of also the great debate between tyranny and freedom.
Yes.
And look, a lot of people who run for office, who get elected to Congress, it becomes their identity. There's something where you look in the mirror and you see the reflection back and you say, I'm a senator. I'm really damn important. There's an old joke that politics is Hollywood for ugly people. There's enormous truth to that. Mm-hmm. And what happens is people desperately want to stay in elected office. It becomes who they are. God, and the terror of being out of elected office, mm-hmm. it is a horrifying void because they don't know who they are.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Larry posts new excerpts of the show on YouTube every day. Just go to youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio and click on the subscribe button.
Hi, Larry. Tom in Texas. Just recently saw your interview with Candace Owens, and really glad to see you there. And then also want to make a comment on Goya Foods. Bravo for the CEO of Goya Foods. He really needs to get these corporations in line with respect for the president and a fair and neutral balance when it comes to corporate responsibility and consumerism. So, by the way, when I went grocery shopping, I picked up a Goya product, which honestly I've never done before, but I did get a product of Goya, and it looked like a lot of empty space there in the Goya product.
Our company was founded in 1936 by my grandfather, who left Spain at only 18 years old. We're all truly blessed at the same time to have a leader like President Trump, who is a builder. And that's what my grandfather did. He came to this country to build, to grow, to prosper.
This is a video of my pantry filled with Goya products. I say to the owners of Goya, you came as conquistadores. You wiped out our indigenous population in Puerto Rico.
Then why did your cabinet have a bunch of Goya products?
You exploited the Puerto Ricans for centuries under your colonialism.
Then why did you buy Goya products until just now?
And now you wish to bring about more of Donald Trump, who hates us, despised us, and has treated the Puerto Rican people with such cruelty. No more Goya. Boycott Goya. I will never buy another product of yours again.
Former House Representative Luis Gutierrez.
Hey, Bob, are you getting a boycott? That's what I've heard because you had the audacity to show up at the president's invitation and say some positive things about him.
You know, Brian, yes. It's suppression of speech. In 2012, 8 years ago, I was called by Michelle Obama to Tampa. And they were mentioning to launch a My Plate thing, which we put on. It's putting the nutritional pyramid into a plate of portion control. They wanted to approach the African-American community, the Hispanic community, to eat more nutritionally. So they called on us as the most recognized Hispanic brand in the United States, and I went. I went to the White House later, and I introduced in Hispanic Heritage Month, President Obama. And so you're allowed to talk good or to praise one president, but you're not allowed, when I was called to be part of this commission to aid in economic and educational prosperity, and you make a positive comment, all of a sudden that's not acceptable. So, I'm not apologizing for saying, and especially if you're called by the President of the United States, you're going to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy, no thank you. I didn't say that to the Obamas, and I didn't say that to President Trump.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. The question I was asked is, do I agree with Thomas Sowell that we are at a point, close to a point of no return if Joe Biden gets elected in November? Is this the worst I've ever seen it? It is. It is. During the Ronald Reagan era, the largest anti-war rallies taking place all over the world. During Vietnam, very contentious time. But this is something I've never really seen before. Where virtually everything that you do or say is done through the prism of, are you anti-Trump or pro-Trump? I told you the best man at my wedding and I barely speak to each other now. I have another close friend I've known for almost 40 years. We don't talk. Now, when I was on television a few years ago, I talked about how government has grown dramatically since 1900. And that in 1900, at all three levels, government took less than 10% from the American people. And a fact check person called me, was shocked by that. And then wrote that Elder was right about that part. Now, what shocked me was that it shocked him. Most people have no idea how big government has gotten. And by big, I'm talking about how much money government has taken away from hardworking Americans. Spending it far less efficiently than you would, far less productively than you would. What did Milton Friedman say? There are 4 ways of spending money. From the most efficient to the least efficient. The most efficient is spending your own money on you. You get exactly what you want. The second, spending your money on somebody you care about, like a spouse, daughter. Third, somebody spending their money on you, as in when you have an expense account that your boss has. You can't go too crazy, but you're probably going to dine in a little bit more expensive restaurant than you otherwise would. But the least productive, least efficient, is spending somebody else's money on somebody else. And we are at that point. And the idea that Drew Brees can't even say, I won't ever support anybody who disrespects the flag, and has apologized for that twice, and his wife does too, we're at a different point. Diane in California said, I have to say that within 4 days of taking your product, I went from staying in a chair in misery to out walking 4 to 5 miles a day. I'm now able to keep my walking routine without pain. So happy I tried Relief Factor. What about you? You see, the 3-week quick start is only $19.95, and it can be at your door in just a couple of days. You're having problems with your back, your knee, your neck, hip. Maybe, just maybe, this will help. Over 70% of the people who order it, go on to order more. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, or call 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
president's by himself in the Oval. I get escorted in, and he's on the phone. And he doesn't stop because he's got business to do. So it tells me, sit down. He goes, Sebastian! He always says, my Sebastian, sit down. And he let me listen to his work because he puts it on a speakerphone. And he had this 15, 20-minute phone call about what happened yesterday in Alabama with Jeff Sessions. And then maybe about another dozen races. And he didn't have any cue cards in front of him. He didn't have a computer. He's old school like me. I don't know about you, but I like paper. I like pens. I want it written down. I use a computer if I have to. I got my phone. I'll text. But if it's not written down, it's not real. But he didn't have any notes, any talking points prepared by staff. As he's talking to this individual who's in charge of certain campaign issues, Donald Trump, the president, is rattling off race after race. Names of the Republicans who are running, names of people who are running in primaries, names of the Democrats they're running against, the polling, the fresh polling, the deltas between the Republicans and the Democrats, what's happening in the race next week or the week thereafter, the names, the data, the dates. And it's all up here in his cranium. It's stunning.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
There's no reason to get all bent out of shape because professional sports are changing names of mascots. Who cares? Really? You want put your money where your mouth is and go vote. Go vote. Vote out the party that you believe is pushing the destructiveness upon this country. The lawlessness. Do you really care? Please tell me. I want to know. Are you mad about the Washington Redskins abolishing their own team mascot? I mean, here's the headline in the New York Post. Washington Redskins officially retiring the nickname that is considered by many to be a racist slur. Many people sit around saying, oh yeah, it's racist. The Redskins? Listen, you know the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame are next. What's with the Buccaneers? Tampa.
America, we have a country to save. And now, here's Larry Elder.
Hey, Larry, it's Mo from L.A. So I'm reading that the LAUSD teachers don't want to return to school unless the police are defunded and charter schools are closed. This is exactly why my kids go to a private school. Exactly why. You know, when you suck at your job, you shouldn't actually be allowed to make demands. You should just go to work and actually try to do better at what you do. It's almost like the worst player on the team asking for a new contract. No, you suck. Go sit down.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Headline, October 9, 2019, LA Times. Only half of California students meet English standards and fewer meet math standards, test scores show. And then when you dig even deeper, looking at the district that runs LA schools, roughly 20% of black kids are reading proficient. 20%. And the Democratic Party has a nerve to oppose school choice. Headline in the Fox News article. Instagram personality Kingface says Trump inspired him to leave dangerous lifestyle of jail and death. About Trump, he said, quote, I mean, he comes from the same surroundings as me. I think he's like the people. I think he is the people. I think he understands the people. He comes from Queens, New York. He made mistakes, like he's cheated. You know, I've lived a certain lifestyle, and he was able to become president. I did the same thing. I've cheated. I've done things. I've done bad things. So when you look at a country where everybody wants to be politically correct, the fact that he's going through regular human being situations and able to overcome it and be the president of the United States, I think that's admirable. It makes me feel like I could become president. End of quote. Kingface happens to be also in my documentary, Uncle Tom, which is available on uncletom.com. He has a few interesting things to say in the film. So, again, be sure and check it out. It is getting just incredible, astonishing, drop-dead reviews on IMDb. And it is the #1 rated political documentary on IMDb for any documentary that has over 1,000 reviews. I'm not making this up. And the list of the other documentaries it's ahead of is pretty impressive. 9.4 on a 10-point scale. And the nearest one I could find close to that was an 8.5. That's how impressive this documentary is. Kent is in Orange County, California. Kent, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Hello, Larry. My pleasure, certainly, to talk to you. I'm a longtime fan and I'm a big fan. The movie sounds great, and I haven't seen it, but I'm going to see it this weekend.
Great.
The comments that you make about the amount taken from the American people for taxes is a great example of exactly how little people understand about the impact of the government on our lives. But I think another statistic that you would enjoy is that when the country was founded in the late 1700s as a constitutional country, 100 years later, the entire federal government consisted of 59,000 people. 36,000 of them were the post office. So it was possible not to have the federal government doing everything for you. As a matter of fact, doing almost nothing for you is much more superior.
Absolutely, Ken. Of course it's possible. We had no income tax until, 1913? And if all these things were supposed to be done by the government, healthcare, welfare, disaster relief, why didn't the Founding Fathers have a funding mechanism for it? Because they weren't supposed to be doing these kinds of things.
Of course not. They had to get back to the farm and actually work for a living.
Absolutely. Well, Ken, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Now, Mary Trump, who I never heard of until she wrote a book, she's a niece of Donald Trump. I guess the bombshell revelation in the book, her allegation that Donald Trump paid somebody to take his SAT.
Can you prove it's true? Can I prove? No, because I'm counting on people I trust who told me this story. So in terms of documentation, no, I can't prove it, but I can.
Can you prove it? You mean in terms of like facts, evidence, documentation? Yeah, that's kind of what we mean. Yeah.
Prove it, but I can certainly say with 100% certainty that I was told this story.
Can you tell us who told you the story? Maybe that way we'll have two people who say the same thing. How about that?
% certainty that I was told this story by a source very close to Donald.
Well, it must be true then. I was told this story by a source very close to Donald. I think they have a vacancy on the Russia-Trump collusion investigation team. You might be able to apply. I think you're overqualified. Another gentleman in my documentary is a man named Bryson Gray.
Bryson, how did you feel waking up one day realizing that you actually weren't black after what Biden said?
When Biden took my black card, it was very, very, very devastating because I didn't know that a older white man who actually supported segregation, I didn't know someone like that could take my black card. But, you learn something new every day. So I was surprised, We're all gonna die!
Bob is in Hawaii. Bob, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Hey, Larry, Sir Lawrence of the airwaves.
Yes, sir.
I'm a big fan and just appreciate your show. So thanks for that. And I'm heard something the other day that kind of would make my feet want to dance, and that is that you may be running for governor. State of California.
Bob, it is a rumor that I have heard myself. And when a buddy of mine called and told me about this and said he heard a rumor that you're running for governor of California, I said, you mean running after the governor of California, Gavin Newsom? He's younger. I can't catch him. He said, no, I mean, you're running. There apparently is a recall effort for Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. As you know, we did recall a governor in California. His name is Gray Davis. And Arnold Schwarzenegger replaced him, came in with a big fanfare. I think he left and his approval numbers were in the 20s. And one of his outgoing maneuvers was to commute the sentence of the son of a political ally, a son who had been convicted of murder, who stabbed somebody, got a 15-year prison term, and Arnold Schwarzenegger commuted it to 6. And it was extremely unpopular, extremely controversial. People were angry about it for weeks, then angry about it for months, and then angry about it. And then now he appears in commercials and apparently makes more movies and nobody talks about it anymore. And don't forget some of the hideous pardons that Bill Clinton did and Barack Obama did, which is why, by the way, neither Barack Obama nor Hillary nor Arnold Schwarzenegger, all of whom have been critical of Donald Trump, haven't said jack about the pardoning of Roger Stone, because then it would raise the pardons that they had done. Elisa, California said, I'm a grocery store worker. I've been working doubles during the coronavirus shutdown. At 52 years old, my 2 bad knees are not getting a rest. I literally limp to and from bed. 2 days into Relief Factor and the pain has decreased substantially. So thankful for this amazing product. What about you? 3-week quick start is only $19.95. ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com. 800-500-8384. 800-500-8384.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Every Republican must run against the Democrats and the left, not just his or her opponent. This is almost never done, maybe never done. Voters, please understand that when you vote Democrat, you get chaos. You get an undermining of everything good in this country. You are voting for the left. Even if you are a liberal, you are voting for the left. You are not voting for liberals. So, in a nutshell, we have to make the referendum on the left. While they make the referendum about one man, we are making about an ideology that is crushing the country. Why don't Republicans do that?
Too many of them don't understand it. They don't understand what we're in the midst of the great debate between socialism and free enterprise. We are in the midst of also the great debate between tyranny and freedom.
Yes.
And look, a lot of people who run for office, who get elected to Congress, it becomes their identity. There's something where you look in the mirror and you see the reflection back and you say, I'm a senator. I'm really damn important. There's an old joke that politics is Hollywood for ugly people. There's enormous truth to that. Mm-hmm. And what happens is people desperately want to stay in elected office. It becomes who they are. God, and the terror of being out of elected office, it is a horrifying void because they don't know who they are.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back to the Larry Elder Show.
Joe Biden said he's going to do something with the economy and this green thing and all that, and that he's going to make it where no president could change it. So then Donald Trump should start setting things just like they do, Obama and him, like Obamacare, which wasn't legal, but the Supreme Court says parts of it's legal. Then let Donald Trump do the same thing. That's what we need to do. Like get rid of CNN, MSNBC, and all the rest of them phony networks where they should be all sued for all their lying that they do all the time. So why don't he start playing their games, you know?
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. At around 6:20, I'll be on the Sean Hannity Show with Leo Terrell. Now be sure and check out our brand new YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio. I think we're at, around 12,000 subscribers? Almost 13. We're trying to get it to 250,000. So I guess we have a bit of ways to go. So please, youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio. Click on the subscribe button. And also check out my podcast by going to my website, LarryElder.com. And you can try the podcast for only 99 cents for the first month. That's right, just 99 cents. Everything you need as an Eldorado is up to date, plus my latest column where I talk about the cancel culture. And I suggest that if you're going to apply this zero tolerance standard, then maybe MLK ought to be canceled for the advice he gave a gay teen who wrote him when he was running an advice column. And MLK said, well, pray and go and see a psychiatrist and try and work your problem out. Advice now that would be deemed to be homophobic. What about Andy Young, who, when he was a consultant for Walmart, was asked about the displacement of mom and pop stores by Walmart? And he said, well, they should be displaced because Arabs have been running these things, selling us bad food, tainted meat, wilted vegetables. And first it was the Jews, then it was the Koreans, now it's the Arabs. And of course, he was fired from his job as a spokesperson for Walmart. But there is a nice, shiny statue of Andy Young downtown Atlanta, and nobody's messed with it. So that's my column up on LarryElder.com. Yesterday, I asked you if you knew anybody who tested positive for COVID-19. 35% of you said yes. 8% of you said that you knew somebody who died from it. President Trump has replaced his campaign manager. Does that make you worried he may not win re-election, yes or no? And the second question is, some Democrats believe that Joe Biden has dementia. Do you believe that those Democrats who believe Biden has dementia will vote for him anyway, either yes or no? In order to participate, go to your app store and download the Zip app by searching on the Zip Poll USA, and be sure and use my code SAGE, S-A-G-E, and we will give you the results tomorrow. Everybody, you have a very pleasant evening, and be sure to show up on time tomorrow. I will be taking attendance. We got a country to save.
That's enough. Put down the mic. I want to thank Larry for the job he's done.
All across America.
The mic has been dropped.
The Larry Elder Show.